Swarthmore. We are here today with Michael Thut, one of my student technicians from last semester, and he's worked in the Makerspace for quite some time, but now has graduated and is still working on finishing his thesis work for his art. And so we're going to find out more about Michael today and some of his skills and interests. So, hi, Mike. How are you?
I'm doing okay. You?
I'm pretty good. Yeah. Keeping busy during this quarantine.
It's the best.
So, yeah. Um, so why don't we start by talking about your major, if you have any other majors in addition to your art, and just tell us a little bit about what you're studying.
Sure. Yeah. So I'm actually a math and art double major. Um, I really enjoy doing a lot of sculpture, but I also have experience in painting and drawing. I'm also interested in pursuing architecture in the future, which I kind of felt was like a good combination of my math and my art. So yeah, that's kind of what I've studied at Swarthmore and what I'm looking forward to studying further in the future.
Okay, great. And when did you start working as a makerspace technician?
Um, the fall of 2018. So I believe it was the second semester that the Makerspace was up and running. I was actually off campus the first semester, so I was planning on working for the Makerspace pretty much as soon as it was up and running, just because I was associated with the art department and I was interested in sculpture. You know, that's what I was doing, and so it was kind of a natural uh, pairing of the two to be integrated into the makerspace.
Okay, great. And what kinds of things have you used the makerspace for, either personally or academically?
I've used it a lot for my art classes. Academically, the sculpture projects that I've had to do, my senior thesis was sculpture related, so I was pretty much producing everything for that in the makerspace. I've also used it for personal projects because I enjoy design and woodworking, and so I've used it to make gifts for people or furniture for myself as well. So
Nice, very
a lot of
nice.
things. Yeah.
What would you say are your sort of main mediums for your artwork?
I really enjoy using wood, but this past year I've kind of been using aluminum and metal a lot. So I kind of hover between those two materials, but I'm open to using a lot of different things. And it's really nice to have a space that isn't necessarily just a wood shop, but is equipped to be able to handle many different materials.
Yeah. And can you name just a couple of things, like a specific skill or just something that you've learned while being in the makerspace?
Sure. So, um, I had a little bit of knowledge of how to use the machines prior to becoming a tech, um, but definitely working there helps you become more acquainted with machines, especially as we acquired new machines. You learn you learn how to use those and just get a lot more comfortable with using those. On top of that, definitely I've learned how to maintain machines, um, and that's not necessarily something that I had knowledge of prior because I've never really owned my own stuff. But learning how to take care of machines is really important if you want to have your own shop in the future. And so that's something that I've kind of shown an interest in and definitely have learned from you and Russell over the last couple of years.
Great. And what kind of specific ways would you maintain the machines?
Just like changing out bandsaw blades if they get broken, or how to properly tension a bandsaw blade. You know, stuff with the table saw as well, changing out blades, knowing when they need to be changed out, which blades are used for what, and if they need to be replaced in any way, all of that kind of stuff. And each machine is similar in terms of the type of maintenance that you need to do, but also different in the sense because all of the parts are different, and so they respond differently to different settings.
Great. Okay, great. Can you think of a time when you helped someone in the makerspace and it was a good memory or experience for you?
Yeah. Plenty.
Yeah,
um,
I know
but
you've been there for a while and you've helped a lot of people.
yeah,
So
I guess so. You know, that was the hardest thing. I couldn't think of any particular time when I was originally thinking about this. But I think last fall was a good example. I helped Dean Henry was taking an art class or auditing an art class um, because she wanted to get familiar with machines and utilize some of the resources of the college. And during one of her projects, I helped her with using the belt sander and pretty much the belt sander to sand some of her flower petals. And that was a really fun experience because this was one of her first projects and she was definitely still very uncomfortable being around machines and when you're uncomfortable being around machines, oftentimes you don't necessarily, I mean, it's not your fault, but you don't necessarily follow the safety protocols or use it
Mhm.
correctly. And so not only was it fulfilling for me to help her realize her idea and her project and to see the joy that brought, but it was also fulfilling to um, and encouraging to be able to help coach and teach her to go from being very uncomfortable with the machine to being able to hop on there and feel confident in what she was doing and how to achieve what she wanted.
Yeah, I would agree with that, that that's a very fulfilling experience with teaching or helping anybody is sort of watching them, build the confidence to go off on their own and be able to carry that skill that you've kind of helped them along with.
Yeah.
Um, and so, can you tell us how you've been keeping occupied during our quarantine right now?
Uh, yeah, sure. Originally, I was in Swarthmore, but then I decided to move back home after a little bit. So just dealing with all of that stuff, like packing everything up, driving back, and dealing with the situation of COVID-19 has been time consuming in and of itself. Since I've kind of settled in here, I've been able to take on my own personal projects, like um, devoting time to learning things like computer programs like Adobe or AutoCAD, stuff like that, where I have a little bit of knowledge, but especially with architecture, it's important to know those things well. So I've been spending time on that, trying to produce some art in whatever fashion, and just enjoying some time with my family.
All worthy pursuits. So
You could say that, yeah.
yeah. And that's a great thing to point out is that we do have very, very robust design software that's available to Swarthmore students and faculty and staff. So, that's a great resource to have. And what are some maker related topics or skills that you have in your head that you maybe haven't learned yet or felt confident in, but you want to build that knowledge on? I know you talked a little bit about the software.
Yeah, a
Other
lot of it
that you
kind
want
of
to.
covers around the computer programs, but that also relates to like 3D printers and the laser cutter as well. I have a working knowledge of the laser cutter, and I've used the 3D printers before, but I don't really know much about those. So kind of getting better acquainted with the stuff in the digital fabrications lab has always been something I've been interested in, and just not something I've been able to devote too much time to as Swarthmore.
Yeah. And prior to leaving campus, you were working with Jay in the engineering shop doing some welding, right?
Yep.
Mm.
Yeah. So that was a lot of fun. I was learning how to TIG weld aluminum, which is more difficult than other types of welding. So I was spending a lot of time over there. Um, Unfortunately, the Makerspace doesn't necessarily have a metal shop yet, but fortunately, it is something that looks like it will happen in the future. So, that's something I'm definitely excited about for the space to build out and get, because I had a lot of fun and really enjoyed being in the engine shop, not just learning how to weld, but just being around and being able to use all of the other metal machines that Jay has in there.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to that too, that we have plans to add a metal shop to our makerspace. So stay tuned, everyone at home. um, and my last question, what is your favorite thing you've ever made? This can be in the makerspace or outside the makerspace. It can be any
Yeah.
time in your life.
uh, there's a lot of things I've enjoyed making, and I was again having a hard time picking one, but I think there was an art project I did last year for a sculpture class that I really enjoyed. It was a steel sculpture, and that was my first experience in the engine shop, working with some of the machines there, and it was my first experience welding as well. So I really enjoyed the process of learning how to use those machines, and then I thought it was a fun sculpture. It was the steel sculpture that had these posts sticking out up from the ground at like almost a 45-degree angle, and then a person was supposed to lean onto the posts, and you had to lean just far enough where you felt like you were falling, but the posts were there and they supported you, so it kind of, you were like held in this ski jump, like how people lean forward on the long ski jumps. You
Yeah.
were kind of like held in that position where like you couldn't support yourself, the sculpture was supporting you, and you had to fall onto it to be able to experience it. So it was kind of like a very fun experience to have.
Yeah, that sounds really exciting. It's a sort of an object, but also interactive at the same time, and kind of sort of disrupts people's routines throughout the day by putting them in a position that's feels a little precarious or
Yeah.
immediate. So
Yeah, it was very
um,
much about the viewer experience, and forcing the viewer to kind of feel a little uncomfortable, or this experience that brings up and induces a sense of anxiety. But also, once you get caught, this sense of calm and enjoyment.
I feel like that's something that art commonly does, is kind of take you a little bit out and make you a little bit uncomfortable, but in a sort of in a good way, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, only after you overcome the obstacle.
Yes, certainly.
So,
All right. Well, this has been our interview with Michael Thut, and he is a senior. He will be graduate. Well, he's graduated, but he won't be moving on quite yet, and hopefully he'll be finishing his thesis work, and we'll get to see a nice finished body of work from him. So looking forward to your developments and all your, pursuits after Swarthmore, and wishing you the best.
thank
And
you.
so we'll wrap it up here. And thanks for joining us.